So I want to welcome everybody to our first live webcam, our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Please excuse any technical hiccups that we might experience. That is the nature of live. That is why we love it so much. And today, of course, we're going to talk about real estate strategies to build EV mobility and infrastructure amenities at your property. It is a mouthful, but it is awesome. If you have a property and you're looking to actually building some EV mobility and infrastructure, this is the place to be. So with that, let's just go through our quick agenda to let you know what you can expect from today. We are going to be here for approximately 45 minutes just chatting, and then we'll do our Q&A at the end. So we're going to, first I'm going to introduce the presenters. We're going to go over a little bit about Envoy. We're going to give you a landscape of what's out there and the strategies that you can utilize in order to take advantage of these. And then we're going to go through the current public programs and resources. So to get started, let me introduce who's on this call. And please excuse me, Eric, I was not sure if you were going to be here. But my name is Stefanie LaHart. I'm the digital marketing specialist for Envoy, and I will be leading you through this webinar as we go through all of the great topics that we're going to be covering. And of course, our speakers today are Jack Axelrod, and he is in our business development covering sales, technology, and business strategies. And then, of course, we have Paul Hernandez, who is our public policy and government relations specialist, and my BFF, I'll just let you know, who's going to give us all of the inside deets on regulatory and legislative news, technology, grants, and public resources. And then also on the call is our co-founder, Eric Ohana, and hopefully he will be popping in and giving us some information as well. I think he is here in the background. And Eric, if you can give us a little video, that would be great too. But no pressure, it's totally cool. So with that said, let's just get started by showing the people out there a little bit about what Envoy is with this great 40-second video.
Stand out from your competition with an amenity that your residents will use and love. Envoy, mobility as an amenity. Envoy is the car-sharing platform that provides on-demand electric vehicles for your residents to use at their leisure.
Right now, our Envoy cars are the most used amenity. It really sets us apart from other properties in the area.
Contact us and we can help you start this premium opportunity.
Okay, there's our video. I'm going to switch over to the next slide. And if you guys could just hold on 1 second, it sounds like people are having a little bit of trouble hearing us. So let me go see what's going over there. Let me know out there in the chat room if you guys can hear us. We are streaming live right now. I see lots of people popping up. This is great. Hold on 1 second. Might be an issue with the audio. Paul, so you don't hear the audio either?
We hear you, Stefanie.
No, you guys can hear me here, but I don't think they can hear us on the live stream, so I'm trying to figure out why that is. Give me 1 second here with the test. No, we're out there. Oh, okay, they hear it now. Great. Okay, now we can start. Hey, Jack, are you ready to kick this off? Why don't you give us a little insight about what this company, Envoy Technologies, is all about?
Sounds great. Thanks for that, Stephanie. Appreciate everyone out there for joining us here to learn a little bit more about Envoy today. Again, my name is Jack Axelrod, heading up business development over at Envoy. Myself, being a Los Angelino and not owning a car, I'm very passionate about the shared mobility space and definitely advocate for a car light living. Hopefully our solution can be a piece at your communities out there to help your residents achieve a similar goal. So a little bit more background about Envoy is we really consider ourselves sort of consultants to our real estate clients, how to best take advantage of what we see is going to be a huge paradigm shift of how folks are interacting with vehicles and how the built environment is going to be greatly impacted by new mobility options in the future. And so how we're really thinking about our service deploying on site is, one, having a tremendous value add for the real estate community by being able to provide a really exclusive amenity on site to assist with initial leasing up the building, advertising and marketing the property effectively, as well as providing a super sticky amenity that folks are using to integrate into their lifestyles to hopefully help them lower their cost of living on site by potentially giving up their vehicle lease or moving from a 2-car to a 1-car family, and really giving them reliable access to transportation services when they need it on site. That is for existing properties as well, one of the biggest value adds we see, and also working with developers and city officials to help influence zoning and policies moving forward, to help advocate for our development partners to build less parking in the future, and potentially incentivize properties to use parking spaces as more livable and green spaces, as opposed to use them for parking vehicles. So how we actually add this value add amenity on site is by placing all electric cars that live at the property 24/7. So each car gets its own parking spot, as well as a dedicated charging station for that vehicle, marketed as a private amenity to the community. So all the residents can download our app and are able to use the app to reserve the car for sort of quick trips around town. I'd like to kind of also touch a little bit on the infrastructure piece as well too. The easiest way for our services to deploy on site is if the charging stations are already available at the community, we can drop off the car dedicated to the station and get the service up and running. On the infrastructure side, and it's something that Paul will allude to later on the call, we are tracking multiple state and federal grant funding sources, as well as local utilities funding mechanisms. So depending on where those properties are located, we're also able to help find different subsidies to help support the cost of infrastructure for your properties on site, not only for our Envoy vehicles, but also potentially other charging stations for the community as well. So we are a little bit over 4 years old as a company, currently in about over 100 communities nationwide, and working with some of the largest members in the real estate space, such as Related, Hines, Greystar. Mostly deploy vehicles on the West Coast, but have recently opened up markets such as Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, Boston, Miami, and currently refine our services to deploy pretty much anywhere in the U.S. So look forward to having a big year here at Envoy, and hopefully introducing our services soon to some of you on the call. So I'll pass it to Paul there, or pause for any questions anybody might have.
Well, we're going to take questions at the end, but when you were speaking about what it looks like to be on a property, this is an example of what it looks like to have Envoy at a property. This is the Oven here in Los Angeles, and you can see we have a little branded spot with a charger and then a beautiful Tesla over there, and our chief of marketing, Drew, using the app to get into the car. So that's kind of what it looks like when you have one of our cars at your property. And it looks different for every property, just depending on the space, but it's very easy for the residents to be able to just pop down to wherever the cars are housed and be able to get out and go. So the ease of use is one of the really big selling points for this. So Paul, with that, are you ready to get into all of our good real estate strategies?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, I believe the audio is, the audio looks good.
Let's do it. All right. So I second Jack's appreciation of everyone that is joining today. We're excited to tell you more about Envoy, and we're excited to dive in today and really look at how EV sharing as a whole is really starting to change in a way that is accelerating rapidly at the state and national levels. It's emerging as a substantial opportunity to connect to public resources, as Jack alluded to, and I look forward to diving in and highlighting some of these key initiatives that are underway right now. So before that, wanted to highlight on this slide specifically why we are speaking about public policy and public grants today, and then our overall track record represents our movement and activities in this space. We've had partnerships with the Energy Commission, with Electrify America and the City of Sacramento. We're developing partnerships with Peninsula Clean Energy, Eversource, a utility back east. We have pilot programs that are underway in the Los Angeles area, specifically in partnership with Lacey. We have Oregon-based utility projects that are under development. And more broadly, we're active as a registered LCFS party, at CARB, as well as Clean Mobility Options program provider, also at the California Air Resources Board in that particular clean mobility program. And more broadly, we're engaged in different utility relationships as members in the CPUC rulemaking on the known as the TEF, as well as other key utility relationships. So that's why we're kind of speaking today about our observations of how this emergent sector, specifically how EV sharing and its electricity components are really advancing as our state and national priorities. And so those are the strategies that we will be focusing on today. So we could go to the next slide, please. So what do real estate partners really need to know about EV chargers, about EV sharing, about electric vehicles? In the big picture, what our partners need to know is that decision makers right now are prioritizing strategies to help accelerate the deployment of EV chargers. So in other words, the target market right now is in the multi-unit dwelling sector, identifying how there are paths to, as defined in the policy narrative, find a way to crack the nut associated with multi-unit dwelling buildings. And so in this sense, there's really an opportunity for, in essence, kind of approaching it from a pre-approval land opportunity, saying our property is ready to take on an EV, our property is ready to take on an EV charger, and kind of bring it to the table as a tool to meet the overall policy objectives that are presented before us. And big picture, and want to present the space that policy goals as a whole are setting substantial demands for chargers to meet infrastructure goals and targets. These are set, of course, at different levels. We see, as an example, in California, our goals are to hit 5 million ZEVs. And recognizing that, there's a need for 224,000 EV chargers that would specifically be in support of the multi-unit dwelling sector. As we amp that up to 8 million ZEVs, that increases to 330,000 EV chargers are needed to support the MUD sector. Because of that—
Paul, we just got a question. So somebody was just asking us if they're interested in the service. They don't have to get the cars and the chargers. If they only wanted chargers, we could help them with that as well, right?
Yes, what we're focusing on is a combination of both, but we're here to support in your development and your EV charging building needs. Our goal is to bring the Envoy— sorry, you're going to hear the BART train in the back. Our goal is to bring a collective package, because the Envoy, when that is also brought and put onto your EV chargers, helps maximize utilization of that infrastructure. So recognizing this as a return on investment opportunity, you build leveraging either state funds or your private funds, and then you put the Envoy onto site for the purpose of maximizing the return in value. And as I kind of dive into more of the dialogue here, it will also focus on how placing the Envoy on site also ties into this bigger narrative of policy opportunities and so forth. So
fantastic. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Sounds good. So where was I? I was at, okay, another point, utilities. This is an opportunity for utilities to build in the space. Utilities recognize this and are prioritizing program offerings. There's going to be expanded opportunities to install EV chargers into state infrastructure, such as affordable housing. And the big picture being that there's substantial opportunities to organize a united front within the real estate sector to say, we as the real estate sector are ready to enter as providers of the space to expand EV charging as well as EV sharing. So kind of setting the lay of the land, we're at a prime moment where there's opportunities in the policy setting. So next slide, please.
Sure. There you go.
Great. Thank you. So 5 points here. Strategies of what needs to be done, specifically looking at how to integrate effective planning and in pursuit of grants and things of that sort. So these are the things that we want to make sure that you're thinking about as you say, okay, do we want to pursue grants? Do we want to pursue paths to integrate this infrastructure? The first recommendation is determine an appetite to cover the percentage of the EV install. Some properties don't want to pay anything, recognizing that that is a potential option under certain programs. Other properties can bear some costs, recognizing that it's an ROI opportunity. And then depending on that, that kind of tells you different paths that you can take in the grant making or grant pursuit process. And we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that later. Another piece is when you're looking at a grant, really breaking it down into its pieces to understand how and when it impacts you. Is it a grant? Is it a rebate? As in you need to pay it out and then wait for the check to reimburse you. Is it first come, first serve? So if you rush for it first and you get to it first, do you win? Versus competitive. Because competitive grants and first come, first serve, I mean, it's intuitive to a degree, but it's worth highlighting. You treat them differently in terms of how you pursue them. And then the last piece here, is there a service procurement opportunity? Can you sell a package to a partner or to the state and look at ways or government to sell a collective package? So kind of looking at how to break down the different funding mechanism and really understand it in order to know how to pursue it effectively. And another piece here, determine how much policy you want to put onto it. In other words, if it's a first come, first serve grant, that doesn't necessarily always have to be policy driven. Of course, when it is a competitive grant, what you really have to do is kind of sit down with your team and say, okay, how does pursuit of this connect to the bigger picture of how to integrate EV culture into our wider property and more broadly in alignment with our wider policy objectives. And so what I did here is I set up this seven, I call it the 7 E's. And essentially
I love it.
And essentially what that is looking at how each grant that you pursue competitively falls within each of these buckets. Because likely what's going to happen is you're going to need some element of each of these. And I'll highlight them super quickly and then I'll keep going. But we're talking about E, environmental protection, GHG emission reduction, pollution reduction. That's a main reason of why we're deploying this much infrastructure as quickly as we are. The second one, EV charging infrastructure, focusing on permitting, focusing on the process of actually putting it in the ground, tallying that and communicating that to tenants and to stakeholders. Another key piece. I'm going to combine energy and electrified transportation, but recognizing that there's an opportunity to connect to a new energy resource and that ultimately that energy resource can be provided through very clean renewable energy and other types of support. And then lastly, or two pieces, I'll also combine equity and employment. Recognizing that you can pursue a grant that it does trigger a certain amount of job and a full-time equivalent or someone actually to build this thing. There's hours and labor allocated to it that is of value. And then there's also the equity piece, recognizing that the goal ultimately is to deploy our resources diversely and as widely as possible. So in the 7E strategy, what I would just recommend is sitting down, listing this thing out and saying, okay, how do we hit these different marks? The more, the better in the scenario that you're being competitive. And I'll go to the next bullet here, position around substantial opportunities to bring real estate to the table as a policy solution. Kind of highlighted that in the last slide, but just recognizing there's a front load opportunity here in which your property, you can essentially say, we're ready to go and we're ready to participate, as well as the 10 properties around us in the neighborhood. That is of power in which you can bring that to the table and really try to advance EV charging as part of your collective, as part of a collective solution. And then the last piece, which is a little bit more abstract, but also a key piece, is focusing on market transformation opportunity. And what that really focuses in on is that deploying EV charging is about future-proofing. It's not only about future-proofing your property, but it's also about future-proofing in the wider social aspects of the investment. It's about future-proofing around pollution and around electrification policy. It's about future-proofing around equity. And so really thinking about this as an opportunity to not only, build infrastructure on your property, but at the same time, future-proof it in a way that hits it hits multiple touch points, and in many cases, the 7 E's that we talked about earlier. So that's how we like to approach and work with partners in partnership building, and look forward to talking more about that later. So next slide, please. And so this is a little bit of a brainstorm here, but recognizing that there's opportunities to bring different ideas to the table of how to bring properties to the market and solve different policy problems. But specifically, what we can do in the premium market, for example, I'll only take a few examples here, but there's opportunities to set up the property to measure GHG emission reductions that are triggered by EV sharing. There's opportunities to measure e-miles or vehicle miles traveled. All of these things are things that Envoy can do on the back end through our data and analysis systems. And just kind of wanted to recognize that we can track that now for the purpose of informing future processes as a group that is collectively seeking to increase e-miles while decreasing vehicle miles traveled, for example. In the technology space, we also have a lot of flexibility in terms of how to pursue things such as vehicle to grid integration. We can create grants and programs that are responsive to demand response, recognizing that EV sharing can also be demand responsive, and respond specifically to different signals. And there's real opportunities to recognize Envoy and other similar EV sharing services as a resiliency strategy, and in addition to that, a low carbon electricity and energy strategy. And in the broader space, there's also an opportunity to recognize the opportunity to build property projects that are focused on pilots around equity, market transitions, environmental justice, and there's opportunities to target affordable housing as well, recognizing the flexibility of and focus of grant resources to ensure that equity policy is emboldened. And across all of this, thank you, Christopher Crockett. MUD stands for multi-unit dwelling. See, I'm the policy guy. I speak acronym generally, and so I apologize that, but it stands for multi-unit dwelling. Generally apartments, but generally buildings of more than 4 units. Kind of highlighting that within the context of Envoy, we target generally about units that are roughly about 100 in size, and at that 100 unit ratio, we see a very high utilization ratio. So thank you for that question, and I'll correct it in the slides before we send them out. So great. So next slide, please.
Paul, do you want to wait until the very end for questions? Because I do have another question for you.
Yeah, let's do a question. The next slides. Yeah.
There you go.
All right, great.
Oh, wait, hold on. There was one before that. Do this
great.
one first. There you go. Sorry, Nick. I didn't want to skip you.
Okay, so Nick, will these grants also pay for upgrading switchboards and other infrastructure if the EV station triggers an increase? I'll say that it depends. That's a great question and a great point. And the short answer is that some programs do. So Nick, I'll take note of that one. And in the slides that we start to talk about specific grants, I'll highlight ones that I do know do support specifically infrastructure upgrades that are triggered by the added load. So I'll be happy to highlight that. So that's a great point. Yep.
Thank you, Nick. And Diane just asked a question specifically about the Envoy system, which Diane, we're going to address that at the very end. So if you'll just hang on for a second, I want Paul to be able to finish his thoughts on all of the policy stuff. So keep going, Paul. What else you got for us?
Let's do the next slide. Let's do that one.
Fantastic.
All right, great. And so this is by no means an exhaustive list of what is out there right now. This is what has our attention right now as at the highest level. We also have a deeper list, but this is the stuff that I want to make sure that you know about as a community interested in real estate and increasing EV chargers. And I'll just highlight a couple very quickly. And if you'd like to deep dive, I think that what we would encourage you is just, reach back and we'd love to talk further about opportunities to collaborate. The first one is Southern California Edison's Charge Ready 2 program. This just opened, and it's a substantial opportunity to deploy specifically in the multi-unit dwelling sector. It can pay for a lot. And in this case, it can pay for up to all of the associated costs in some cases. And Nick, to your point, my understanding is that does pay for upgraded infrastructure, specifically around added load. So that's a big one, and recommend that everybody deep dive that, especially if you're in the Southern California Edison territory. If you also don't want to deep dive it, give me a call. We could talk more about it in depth. Myself or Jack, because we both follow this closely. Another one that's emergent, and this is exciting, it's actually coming out of the state budget in California, but there's a developing program around EV infrastructure and multi-unit dwellings coming out of the Energy Commission. Another opportunity for collaboration on leveraging and deploying in the real estate sector. Specifically, this would pay for EV chargers. I don't know if it's exactly 80%. It would pay for 80%, but that's kind of where the assessment is right now on how much that would pay. So it wouldn't pay in full, but it would pay for a substantial amount. And that specifically would be designed as a grant program. CARB clean mobility options. We highlighted this earlier, but I think we want to highlight it again quickly. This is a very large program that's emerging in California. The phase one has just been the funding for that, or the applications have just been processed for that. Phase two, an estimate is that it would happen at the end of Q4 of this year. A major opportunity to deploy EV chargers, as well as mobility as a package for a 36-month pilot. Equity focused, lots of opportunity there. And so would recommend, especially if you have affordable housing asset, looking into ways to integrate that particular offering into and pursuing that particular first come, first serve fund. CalEVIP, another great one, coming out of the Energy Commission, headed up by the Center for Sustainable Energy as the admin on that program. It pays for various amounts depending on region. So I've put a general range here between 4,500 to 7,500 per charger. There's kickers for LIC, low income community, disadvantaged community. So just kind of want to express that as a range, recognizing that there's different areas and the pricing is different in different areas. Another great program, and this is representing the publicly owned utility kind of approach, is some of the great rebate programs that are coming out of Anaheim Public Utility, $5,000 to $10,000 range, again, kind of depending on the focus of the infrastructure. Opportunities to integrate there, as well as a first come, first serve approach. And there's also a mobility program that they're testing there. So there's opportunities to combine EV chargers, approach and use that rebate program, and also have mobility added there as well. Want to also highlight the low carbon fuel standard program. If you have chargers on your property, you earn something called the low carbon fuel standard credit, and there's a value that is associated with that credit on a per kilowatt basis. So if you're either have integrated EV chargers on site or are thinking about that, please do keep LCFS or the Oregon equivalent, the Clean Fuel Reward Program, on your radar, and ask questions about it, because there's ways that you can leverage that as a resource directly for your property. And we do work to associated credits. Oregon, there's a program open in Pacific Power. They're looking for EV grants, or EV specifically mobility grants. And so what they're looking to do is to support those, and the filing date for that is in within the next month or so. So if there's interest in creating an equity-focused project there, please let us know. There's a lot of opportunity to build out equity projects in Oregon, California, and elsewhere. The Texas Beneficiary Mitigation funds are also on our radar right now. This can pay for between 60 to 80%. If it's 60% directly for the multi-unit dwelling, 80% if it's publicly accessible. The funds are first come, first serve, but the program is ending in early September. So it gives you a small window, or gives us collectively a small window to pursue and secure those funds. Just kind of putting that timeline on your radar. Lastly, at least within the context of today, the New York program, the NYSERDA Clean Equity Program Challenge is on our radar. This is a multi-million-dollar opportunity around deploying specifically in targeted disadvantaged communities, as well as in affordable housing. It's going to be a competitive grant, and teams are forming right now to align and pursue those particular funds. So that's another funding mechanism that we see right now that can help accelerate EV charger deployment in the multi-unit dwelling sector. Again, by no means exhaustive. There's many more opportunities and rebates that are in the pipeline or under development. But the big picture wanted to share with you kind of where our mind is in terms of where there's immediate opportunity. If you're outside of these regions, please feel free to also reach out to us. We can have a quick scoping specific to your state needs. So next slide, please.
It's time to connect.
So let's connect. So
it's time to connect.
So big picture, I think before kind of opening it up, today was about first of all, getting you excited about this space. This is about the real estate opportunity in EV chargers, and to really get people excited about the lay of the land around policy, which is really setting the stage for this evolution of EV chargers growth in the multi-unit dwelling sector. And then the third part of that is really introducing Envoy as a key part of this around accelerating the connectivity between the real estate sector and this emergent policy space around multi-unit dwellings. And we're eager to further discuss with you. We hope that today kind of brought up some ideas. We hope you have questions, and we look forward to opening it up not only in this session, but then as we go into, as we close, we'd also like to, pick up further discussion with you. So
yeah, fantastic. We're going to answer some questions now, Paul and Jack. Are you guys ready? And Eric, you can jump in too. But first, I just want to show this one because, hey, thanks, Nick. Nick's already interested in talking to us, so that's pretty exciting. And by the way, Oregon, I'm probably moving there. So Nick, I might be looking you up so you can show me around town. Okay, let's get on to some questions here. Let's go to the next one. So this one's from Mark. He wants to know if we've seen any opportunities in South Florida. What you got on your radar, Paul?
So South Florida has some interesting programs under development. They also have utility programs that have been scoped around multi-unit dwellings as well. Happy to break it out and have that discussion with you. But, big picture being that areas that have high density from an energy perspective have high energy demand, and the utility recognizes that. And so targeting South Florida from an energy perspective is something that I'd love to talk with you more in depth about, Mark. And I do think that there's a lot of alignment there in terms of opportunities. So that's my way of saying, give me a call and then let's go from there.
Yes, please. Anyone who's on this webinar and wants more information, you could always message us right through our page or follow up with us. We will be following up with you because we do have your information. So don't worry, you won't get lost in the cracks. So next up, Garrett wanted to know if there's any Washington state funding.
Yes. Short answer is yes. I'll kind of say the same thing that I responded to Southern Florida. But what I'd really like to highlight about Washington State, Garrett, is the passage of low carbon fuel standard. So from now that that's passed for the next 2 years or so, there's going to be a development process for the LCFS program. So this idea of the property and the stakeholders being compensated under the LCFS program is something that's going to be very live in the discussions, especially in Washington State. So thank you for bringing up Washington State, and happy to really deep dive specific program opportunities that are available in Washington. So yeah, give us a call and happy to further dig in there. And please do keep LCFS on your radar, because that's a big move where, it's going to be California, Oregon, Washington. That's a major opportunity on that front that is emerging as a united front in the pursuit of our EV future. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Garrett. And here's Diane. She's been waiting to hear about this one. She wants to know a little bit more about Envoy. So Jack, if you want to jump in and give her some answers with this. She wants to know, do we have a proprietary software it installs in the vehicles and that does all of its measurements? Which charging systems does it interface with? Charge point. What's the other one? Oh, EVgo. Sorry, my camera's blocking it. But Jack, you can see the question. You want to jump in here?
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Diane, appreciate the question. So we do have proprietary hardware and software that we do install in the vehicles, not only to facilitate our app reservation system and being able to remotely lock and unlock the cars, but also capturing tons of data points in terms of how the vehicles are being used, where they're going, how many users are interacting with the vehicle, and a lot of other deep data sets that we can dive into specifically if you had a specific need or request of how the vehicle is being used on site. We are fairly brand agnostic on the charging stations in terms of any level 2 charging station will be able to successfully interface with one of our Envoy vehicles. We do have closer partnerships in the space and currently working closely with a company called Greenlots right now to help out on the EV charging space as well. And just kind of a tag on to that is we have been also working closely with the Green Building and Sustainability Council to confirm that a deployment of an Envoy service on site can actually help contribute to up to 3 LEED certification points to a property, which is interesting, and happy to talk more about how to take advantage of that on site as well too.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jack. So you guys, we're coming up to just almost a quarter of the hour. So is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience or bring up or discuss? I'm not seeing any other new comments. I think we got mud discussed already. Thank you so much, Jason, in the chat room for answering that. But if anybody else out there watching has a question specifically about things we've discussed or just the Envoy system in general, we do invite you to just drop that in the chat room. We can get you answered live, or we could also follow up with you after the webinar. So just let us know. We got a couple more minutes on here. We know that you want to get through your Wednesday, so we want to be aware of the time still. Let's see. Jason answered another one. Oh, okay. Here's another one from Diana. Nope, wrong one. Sorry. Oh, now they're coming in fast. There you go. Diana wants to know, are the Southern California programs available for the Bay Area as well?
So good question. Short answer is that specific to multi-unit dwellings, right now there has been a program specifically in the PG&E territory that did also focus on multi-unit dwellings. So specifically speaking to Bay Area, I believe that program has been sold out as of right now. What I do know is that there's a lot of target and focus at different utilities, specifically on multi-unit dwelling property pilots and so forth. There's, for example, active at the commission, CPUC specifically, there's discussions around vehicle to grid integration and pilots in that sense. There could be paths where there could be some multi-unit dwelling connectivity there. But in terms of active utility programs in the Bay Area right now that are like a parallel to the Southern California Edison program, the investor-owned utility program, I don't believe is actively bringing in multi-unit dwelling properties right now. Now, with that said, what I would also speak to is that there are many different utilities in the Bay Area. And so what we should probably do, Diana, is talk about what your particular area and territory is. So, for example, Peninsula Clean Energy, East Bay Community Energy, Marin Clean Energy, all of these energy community choice aggregators also have sub-programs that are available. Many of those create rebate programs that go into the CalEVIP, the rebate program that we discussed earlier, but they also do have at times sub programs where you can enroll multi-unit dwellings. So how about this? Let me do a little bit of my homework in terms of which specific projects would be that you could connect to. And if Diana, if you could tell me a little bit more about the particular areas that you're interested in, I think that we could come together and I could give you more of a firm yes, no. But happy to look more specifically into those sub-programs.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Diana, for that question. And we will be following up with you on that. Okay, next up we have Peyton, and he wants to know, or she wants, sorry, Peyton, how do you accurately assess the balance of supply and demand with individual properties? So Jack, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of vehicle deployment, we'll typically deploy at a ratio of about 1 car for every 100 units of a property if we're looking at a large apartment complex. When we deploy in that ratio, we're seeing pretty high utilization on site in terms of number of users that are using the Envoy vehicles. We'll always recommend to deploy at least 2 vehicles initially, just so the service isn't monopolized by a couple of power users and there's sufficient transportation options available for the whole community. So I'd say rule of thumb, 1 per 100 units, but is also happy to deploy as many vehicles that you'd like on site as well.
That's right. And we've got some really exciting ones coming down the line now. I know we're pretty hot with the Polestar, so let's talk about getting that Polestar 2 out there, right, guys?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so checking in with the chat room. If you guys have questions, please let us know. We do have a couple more minutes. We're going to be here for about 10 more minutes. If you have more questions, let us know, and we'll get them answered for you. And you can also follow up with us afterwards, either through our page or, of course, reach out directly to Jack or Paul. Their email addresses are right there on the screen. And if you want to get started just inquiring how to get Envoy on your property or more information, you could always fill out our property identification form, which is linked right there. It is www.envoythere.com/onboard, and we can answer any questions that you want and just get you started in the process to figure out what you would be available to you and what you could actually utilize for your property. And in fact, you know, Paul, that's one of the things that's always strikes me is there's so many programs out there that people could actually apply for, and they don't because they just don't know about them or they don't understand them. And I know back when I was in the nonprofit sector, it always amazed me how much money we qualified for simply because we were the ones that applied for it, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think you bring up a really great point. It's the nature, I think, of tracking as many resources that are available and really understanding when they hit versus when they're going to be another year out and things like that. And it's kind of it's always a challenge to kind of have that smoothing process where you understand, okay, this is happening now. We can prepare for it, you know, two months from now, and really kind of line those type of things up. But I absolutely share that with you just from the amount and the volume of things coming in this sector, especially right now, it's substantial. And so that I share that with you in terms of kind of just recognizing that there's times to understand when to plan and when to be ready to go and prepare. So a good example is that we put on the list is carb clean mobility options. Yeah, we've put a little blurb here that carb clean mobility options is coming, but we also have to recognize that there's a lot of planning and direct community engagement that is also associated with that, right? So there's a lot that's embedded to that process. So I guess that's me just kind of echoing echoing that as you've expressed it. So and so the goal here, I think the goal for us is really, if there is something, if there's a property that you're interested in and you want to, put it in queue for us to say, okay, look for grants for this. It's in 2022, it's in 2023 or whatever. We can even still start to get that in queue to say, okay, it makes total sense to get this affordable housing property into XYZ grant. There's a reverse process that we can do here to get real estate partners ready to go pursue and be the first in line for many of these opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to let everyone know out there, we do post a lot on our on our LinkedIn page as these programs come up to notify you when the applications are due or just information about them. So make sure you're following our page. We are trying to make sure that we're sharing as much information as we can regarding the programs, policies, and locations that these are actually available at. Because there are, again, many, many out there, and we want to make sure that, if you do qualify or you're interested in them, that you also have the information. Because here's the thing we all know about government money, Paul, right? If it doesn't get utilized, that program dies. So you guys, you have to apply for this stuff. Otherwise, this stuff just disappears, and then it doesn't do any of us good as we all try to collectively move, together as a society as zero emissions and being more eco-friendly and making sure that we're actually, providing for the future instead of just, taking away from the future. So I just want to put that out there. It's our job basically to apply for this money. So make sure that you're looking for programs that would be applicable to you. Okay, we did have a question way back in the beginning, and I know we touched on it just a second, but I want to throw her out there again. Diana had asked us about charging stations. Do you want to address that again real quickly, Jack, just for anyone that missed that question?
Yeah, sure. Happy to help support infrastructure on site as all of our vehicle deployments, rely on having infrastructure available as well too. So we're always supportive of adding infrastructure on site and happy to work with anyone interested in adding charging stations as best practices in the installation, setup, and as Paul alluded to before, different programs or incentives that might be available to help support the cost of the infrastructure as well.
Great, Jack. Thank you so much for that. I know we always get a lot of questions about that, so I wanted to make sure we covered that again. And again, we still have a few more minutes. If anybody wants to toss another question in the chat room, we can get it answered for you live. Otherwise, you can follow up with us after the live webinar. And I have to say, just real quickly, guys, for our first live webinar, I think we're like killing it. Like everything's working. Right. We're getting good questions. Can we just give ourselves a little golf clap? Because I'm proud of us. You never know with these things. They could just totally go off the rails so quickly, but you've been awesome. And to let everybody out there know that's watching, we are going to be doing more live webinars like this. I would love to do them once a week, but I know my team will probably make me only schedule them once a month. So if you have specific questions or things you would like to see covered, then please, give us that information and we'll put something together that maybe focuses more on that. So we know what we want to cover, but if you're looking for more information on something else that has to do with EV mobility, we're more than happy to also integrate that with our next webinar. So Paul's sitting there laughing. He's like, what? I got to do this again. Yeah, this is awesome. This is live, guys. Anything can happen.
Well, let's do it.
Let's do it. Killing it here. Okay, Eric, are you still on the call? If there's anything you'd like to add before we sign off, because we are getting ready to come to the end. We want to keep this at a hard hour, just so we're not taking up too much time for people on a Wednesday. It is Wild Wednesday, hump day, trying to get us to the weekend. Anyone else out there? All right, I think I'm going to wrap it up. Eric, going once, going twice? Nope. Okay. Let me just say thank you, everyone, for attending our very first live webinar here on LinkedIn. We are so excited to be able to share this information with you. If you have questions specifically to programs that we have covered, please make sure you get in touch with Jack, Paul, or myself. You can do that right through the page right here on LinkedIn or email us directly. You see their email addresses right there on the screen. I'll give you a chance to actually take a screenshot quickly. And if you like this, please share on social media that you found a lot of value in this. Give us a shout out on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, even Instagram. We kill it basically on Instagram stories. So if you're not watching us over on Instagram, please join us there.